Tale of the Gator, winner of honorable mention in the Writer's Journal Fiction Contest of 2012, available in GZ Tales Volume 1 on Amazon. Deep in the southern Louisiana swamps, there are places no man should tread. There are no roads, no sidewalks, and no help if you get in over your head. They are places thick with tall cypress trees and long hanging Spanish moss. The dark waters teem with life both beautiful and deadly. One wrong step could put you on the back of a copperhead snake or into the mouth of an alligator. Worse, you could find a rougarou, giant rogue alligator with a taste for humans. Even with such dangers, there is a rare breed of human that dwells in these places. Jed is one of those people. Jed had lived in the swamp as long as any old black man could. At least that was his reasoning. He didn't have much in his shack over the water, but he had what he needed. 2 chairs, one for outside, a table, a stove with some cookware, a hammock, and a wash bin were about all that graced his little home. He kept his hunting and fishing supplies in his pirogue. No one came around, so he didn't worry about thieves. No one coming around was just how Jed liked it, too. At 60 years old, he was content as a man could be. One peaceful evening, he boiled himself some crawfish and sucked their heads out while rocking on his small porch. His gnarled old fingers were strong and quick. Even most snakes didn't stand a chance against his grasp. As he finished his meal, Jed watched the sun set through the cypress trees. Night life began to chirp, hoot, and call in a manner of ways. Jed relaxed and enjoyed the evening symphony. After a while, he rose from his chair and walked inside to his hammock. It had been a good day, and Jed looked forward to the next one. They say you can't sneak up on the Cajun folk out in the swamps. Jed was no exception. He didn't get to be 60 by being caught unawares. Still, in the middle of the night, hands grabbed him from his hammock. Jed woke with a start, but those hands grasped him tight. He barely got a look at their shadows before the smelly rag was jammed over his face. Jed fell into a narcotic fog on a journey of no return. The next time Jed opened his eyes, he couldn't see much. Only blurry motions danced in his vision. They were keeping him drugged. He heard voices. "You really found me a winning specimen, didn't you? An old man with half his teeth missing. Was he a challenge for you? Hey, you said to grab someone, so we grabbed someone. Besides, this is perfect for the trial stage. If it kills him, it's no big loss. On top of that, he lived alone out in the swamp. No one's gonna miss this guy." "Are you sure no one will miss him?" "Absolutely. There was no one else around." "Fine, let's proceed." The voices and lights faded away. When they came back, Jed could feel he was being moved. "He seems pretty tough for his age. Maybe he'll survive." "If he does, this will be a bigger success than we thought." There was laughter, and the voices faded away again. Jed couldn't make sense of it all. He couldn't think straight through the drugs. Jed woke one more time to the sound of screaming. He didn't know anyone could scream like that. He didn't even realize he was the one screaming. Needles penetrated his body from all angles. They even went into the corner of his eyes. There was a powerful smell of chemicals and detergents. His body fought to convulse and writhe. Was it convulsions or something else? Electric bolts of agony made blinding lights dance before his eyes. It was a nightmare of madness. Then, like the end of a fireworks display, it all went dark. When Jed woke, he heard a loud and guttural growl. "Being that loud must be a big old rougarou. I better get up." Getting out of the hammock felt strange to Jed. He thudded against a metal wall loudly. "Oh, That Rougarou gonna knock my house down, Jed thought. He opened his eyes, bewildered at the sight of high metal walls. He was in a massive cell, and far above him he could see a large window. A man in a white coat was looking down at him. "What's this? Why everything looks so strange?" Jed continued to think to himself. As a matter of fact, his eyesight was different. Nothing was blurred, rather it was clearer than ever before. He had a kind of binocular vision, yet he could see well to his sides at the same time. It was an unnerving feeling. In a natural effort to balance himself, he put a hand against the metal wall. It wasn't his hand. The arm he saw was broader than the base of a cypress tree and the colored shades of green. The skin was thick, like that of an alligator's back. The arm ended in a huge hand with thick, powerful fingers. At the end of each finger, a retractable claw emerged, slightly gouging the wall. Jed stared in horror, and a roar of shock echoed in the chamber. That arm! That sound! This was more than just a giant alligator. Perhaps it was the Rougarou of legend. Such a thing would be a monstrous beast. As he stood in panic, he turned and something thudded against the wall behind him. Nothing felt right. It didn't feel like his body. For that matter, he seemed to be awful far from the ground. Was he being carried by the giant Rougarou? Jed angled his eyes downward, expecting to see his feet dangling in the air. He expected to see teeth embedded in his body in the mouth of a monster. Instead, he saw his way down the mountain of a giant green body, leading to the biggest pair of clawed feet he ever saw. No, Jed thought. Can't be. I ain't no Rougarou. Still only one way to find out. Wiggle your toes, Jed. Wiggle your toes. He did, and so did the ones below. "Can you hear me?" a voice crackled from the speaker. A man in a white coat, a scientist, was still looking down at him. "Can you understand me?" Jed just stared up at the man. He tried to speak, but only a guttural noise came out. "I'll take that as a yes. You're really quite remarkable. You survived the process with dazzling results." "Process? What process?" "As a matter of fact, you did far better than we ever hoped for someone much healthier than you were. You've been unconscious for a month developing your new body." "New body?" Jed looked at his hands and arms again. He never dreamed of being so big. His legs were even bigger. When he saw the tail that hit the wall before, it was long and thick. It ended with a pair of spikes at the end. He noticed his nose. It was long and broad. As he looked around some more, he noted that one wall was shiny and reflective. He could see himself in it. He had the head of the biggest Rougarou there could be. No, it was even bigger than that. Jed didn't know what a stegosaurus was, but he knew what a dinosaur was. He saw the bony plates of such a creature going down his back. They made him appear even taller than he really was. "You're wondering what we did to you, and how," the voice came again. Jed spun and roared in rage up at the scientist. The walls shook. Even the protective glass shook. The scientist darted a glance to another man at a console, who just shrugged. Had he made them nervous? The scientist looked back down at him. "I don't know if someone like you can understand. We infused you with a special cocktail of reptile and dinosaur DNA, along with some secret ingredients. You are a true marvel of science." "I'm a monster," Jed thought. "Do you realize you don't have to worry about your age? As a human being, you were old. As this reptilian, you're actually quite young. You're stronger than even we know. We even took measurements of you. You stand 14 feet tall, not counting those bony plates. The span of your hand from pinky to thumb is an amazing 6 feet. You're a powerhouse. And we're going to learn how to tap that power for Coven." Jed clenched those massive fists. He had heard just about enough from this fancy-pants man with his scientific pride. He didn't know what mumbo-jumbo turned him into a rougarou, and he didn't care. Rage swelled. With lack of anything else to do, he shot out a fist and punched the wall. The metal crumpled like paper, and the vast room shook again. The scientist looked to his partner. "Quick! How hard was that punch?" The other man stared wide-eyed at his screen. "Well, spit it out!" 30 tons, the other man stammered. "The sensors say 30 tons. The walls can't hold him." "Then gas him! Gas him now!" Jed noted the flaw of his cell right away. A mist sprayed and floated down toward him from the high ceiling. He wasn't going to wait for it. Jed lunged at the wall where he could see himself and smashed both fists into it. Metal shattered and flew in all directions. Jed had to pause at the new sight that greeted him. All he could see outside were the rolling waves of the ocean. His abductors had taken him out to sea. "Stop!" the voice shouted. "You belong to Coven now. There is no place to go." Seeing a choice between apparent slavery and the open ocean, Jed stepped out and splashed down to the water below. "Get the boats! Get after him!" the voice shouted. As Jed sank, his horrors at himself turned to wonder. He was sinking fast, but didn't have the urgent feeling to get air. He knew any old gator could stay underwater for a long time. Maybe that was the case for him now. Jed put his arms out and pushed against the water, swimming like a giant frog. It was effective, but clumsy. He wondered at how he could swim. Could he swim like he'd seen alligators do? He tried to move his body like an alligator. It wasn't easy, but he soon started to move with more speed. He didn't even care where he went at this point, so long as it was away from there. Then he saw the motorboats above him. The boats sped away over the water. Jed had a thought. He may have lived in the swamp his whole life, but he wasn't stupid. You don't get old in the swamp by being stupid. "I bet they think I'm going home," Jed thought. "I'll follow them boats. When we do get home, I'll learn them a lesson they won't never forget." So Jed stayed low and followed the boats. Occasionally they slowed and seemed to be searching the water. Then they would pick up speed again. Jed found he had little trouble keeping up with their speed. That meant he was moving at about 60 miles per hour. It wasn't long before the boats were at the edge of the swamp. They stopped in the high reeds bordering the trees. Jed surfaced a few yards away and stayed low enough that only his eyes, nose, and tips of the bone plates protruded, hidden by reeds. He could hear their leader talking. "This was the way to the old man's shack. When he shows up, we shoot him with the tranq darts and haul him back in. Quick and quiet. But remember, he's not an old man anymore." There were 3 boats with men and guns. Jed sank back under the water, intent on delivering that lesson. These men weren't amateurs or unprofessional. They were highly trained at their jobs, very skilled. They watched in all directions and kept their weapons poised. As the boats sat 3 in a row, Jed went under the middle one. He paused for a moment, then rose fast, lifting the boat into the air. He did it with such force that men were launched skyward. Those that managed to hang on were treated to a whirling ride. Jed spun that boat like a pizzeria chef, sending all remaining men in it flying through the air. Men in the other 2 boats instantly opened fire, but the needles on the darts couldn't penetrate Jed's new skin. He brought that boat crashing down on one of the remaining 2. Screaming and crashing were all that could be heard. As he turned to the last boat, Jed lashed his tail and sent debris and men from the 2 merged boats flying 80 yards across the swamp. Facing the last boat, Jed roared as loud as he could. The very force of his voice threw men out of the boat. One man fought to reload and aim his rifle. Jed grabbed him in ferocious jaws and shook him like a dog with a new toy. Ribs snapped and he flung the man high into the air. The body flew away out of sight over the marshes. Some men were dead or horribly injured. Others ran for their lives. Jed didn't care. He sank back into the water. It was time to go home. He swam out of sight where he could and walked where he couldn't. In a short time, he was gazing at his old shack. A great sadness came over Jed as he realized he could never live in it again. He looked at his hands. These people made him a monster. For that, he would never forgive them. But what would he do now? Maybe he should be like one of those super-powered folks with special names. He didn't know if he wanted to be a hero. He did know that the other swamp folk would surely call him something. I'm not a man anymore. Heck, I'm not Jed anymore. I'm a Rougarou. I am the Gator. As Jed thought the last word, he was surprised to hear himself say it aloud. He said it with the same guttural growl, but he still said it. So he could still talk after all. He didn't know how much that might help him, but he felt slightly better because of it. Knowing he couldn't stay in his old home, the Gator wandered into the swamp. Swamp folk did come to know of him with fear and respect. The Gator is one more good reason for the unwise not to go wandering in the swamps. So you people on your little tour boat be real careful, said the old man in the rocking chair with a pipe in his teeth. He sat in front of a small bait and supply shack while some college students prepped a boat. The Gator don't like no strangers. He might think you're one of them Coven people. Can you believe that guy? Said a young man as the boat pulled away. What a crazy story. The old-timer looked back over his left shoulder into the trees. It was just in time to get a glimpse of a giant shadow vanishing from sight. The old man puffed on his pipe. Well, I warned him. Can't say I didn't warn him. And he stared out at the swamp he knew the Gator still loved. Thank you for listening to our story today. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for future stories.